Hey everybody, today we are going to talk about the 11 books that I read in April. This is still a little bit less than I was hoping to average each month, but there was a lot going on. So let's just hop right into it because I'm really excited about a lot of the books that I read. A lot of them did end up being 3 stars for me, but they were still really good. Is that a contradiction, being 3 stars and being really good? I don't think so. We're gonna start with Seasons of Glass and Iron by Amal El-Mohtae. And this one was definitely one of the ones that I gave 3 stars, but really enjoyed. We have this collection of short stories. The reason I was excited for this book is because it's by one of the 2 authors of This Is How You Lose the Time War. And I really enjoyed that book and the different style from what I normally read. So when I saw that they had a collection of short stories out, I was like, sign me up, put my name on the hold list on Libby. I think that in a collection of short stories, you're always going to have some stories that you identify with more or that you enjoy more, and some that are like less than favorite. And I definitely did have this. There were some stories where I found myself checking to see how long was left in this section of short story. And I also think that maybe that was something of like my own issue, because unlike a book that has chapters, the short stories, at least in this collection, it was just a chapter was a short story. So some were only like 15 minutes long, an audiobook version, and others were like 50 minutes long. And not to say that the longer ones had me checking more. There was actually, I think, one of the shorter ones where I was like, okay, I think I'm good. But overall, I really enjoyed experiencing Amal's voice throughout the different stories. I think that it was a consistent voice with what we had, and This Is How You Lose the Time War. And I really enjoyed seeing various perspectives from one author throughout their time and getting different experiences of women, sometimes in magical settings, sometimes through letters. And it was good. I think that if you do enjoy books like This Is How You Lose the Time War, or I would almost say like books that are based more not in like you're in one person's POV, but you're experiencing it through written letters, I think that you would enjoy this book as well. Our next book is book 2 in the Inheritance Game series. This is The Hawthorne Legacy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and I gave this one 3 stars as well. So book 2, we pick up, I believe it's not quite instantaneously from where book 1 has ended, but it's pretty close. It's not like a ton of time has passed. We're still following Avery, we're still following the Hawthorne brothers, and the clock is still on. Like, we're still ticking down closer to, will she be able to inherit? How is she tied to this universe and to the inheritance besides being named in the will? And yeah, I think that overall it was a good book, but I feel like it also fell into middle book category that we see a lot in trilogies or series, where the middle book, at least for me, I believe that it's not necessarily adding a whole bunch and it's maybe longer than it needs to. I did a buddy read with Brandy, and I think we both had less to say about this book overall throughout reading it. I just like found myself checking in on the buddy read a lot less frequently. Cruising right along, the next book this month was actually the finale of the original Inheritance Game series. I've looked at the timeline a couple of times online because I do think I'll end up buying this series. I do like it. And I think we have the original trilogy, and then we might have, I think there's one book called like the Hawthorne Brothers or something along those lines. And that's like an in-between book. And I think Jennifer is coming out with a second trilogy. And there might be another independent book in this universe. I'm all for multiple series within a universe. Love it. I do enjoy that we have like conclusions though, so that if you are done with the series, you can have your answers. Or like in my case, I might wait a little bit to do the standalone books and wait until the next trilogy is finished, which I believe it's going to be finished sometime this year, maybe like in the summer. Let me know if you know when the next series trilogy is going to be finished in the comments. But in book 3, it's also hard, I feel like, reviewing series. I love reading series, but I'm sitting here and as I was taking notes, I was like, oh, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil all the way back to book 1 for some of these twists and turns. I did enjoy book 3 more than book 2, and I really enjoyed some of the twists that happened. I think I called about half or 3/4 of them. I was like, this is what's going to happen. And I definitely had more to contribute in the buddy read on this book. Again, Avery is our main character. The Hawthorne brothers are still there. Avery's older sister, Libby, is still there. Everyone who you've known through the first 2 books, we're here. We get solid resolutions and we get good twists. So I don't know if I've said it. It's a 3-star book for me. First 3 books of April, 3-star reads. I would still recommend them. I think if you enjoyed the first book, just like the Inheritance Games, I think you will enjoy book 2 and 3. I think especially if you can go like right from book 2 to book 3, I think that'll like be a better transition. Now we're on to, I only actually did 2 physical books this month, but I have 2 of the audiobooks. I have physical copies. And before we talk about this book, which I've been very excited for and did enjoy, I want to talk briefly about the author. So I have not, full disclosure, I've not seen this interview. I think it was on a podcast, but I have heard multiple people in the book world talk about how Andy has come out and said that his books are not political, and that if you are looking to find political messages in his books, you're looking in the wrong place or something along those lines. And that is something that I disagree with. I think that reading is very political. What you are able to read, what you have access to, what content is in those books, those are all influenced by our culture, which is influenced by politics. What is deemed acceptable, what the publishing industry will be okay with including. And I think that with the resurgence of reading and with books becoming popular as inspiration for both movies and TV shows, I don't see how reading is not political. I think when I'm reading a book with a scientist as the main character, as someone who is in space and exploring, especially in a book where our Earth is dying, maybe not necessarily by our own hand, but then we get to see beautiful moments of humans coming together despite differences in cultures and despite different governments. I think seeing that come together, I think that's a message in and of itself. It's not my place to tell the author that they're wrong and their book is political. I don't want to do that. I just want to make how I've read it and how I see it kind of clear, I guess. It's hard when this is a little bit disappointing to me, especially in a book that I've looked forward to. But let's not get into that anymore. It is kind of like a heavier topic, and the main part of this channel is reviewing and celebrating books. And so reading Project Hail Mary, I gave it 5 stars. I had so much fun living in Grace's point of view. I thought the jumping back and forth between present day and past was really well done. I'm not going to talk too long about this book actually in the plot, because I feel like between the recently released movie, which was phenomenal by the way, so well done, and the hype this book has been getting. Most of you, if you don't know what the plot is about, we have an astronaut who wakes up with amnesia and slowly discovers that he is sent on a mission to save Earth. If you haven't seen any spoilers yet, I think that's the best description I can give that's spoiler free. I have rated this 5 stars. I really enjoy Andy's writing style, and I love the science that is included in his books, and this one is no different. I laughed, I cried, like the full gambit of emotions. I experienced it all. This is your sign that, at least for me, Project Hail Mary was worth the hype, and I would recommend it, and I would read it. Shoot Your Shot by Lexi LaFleur Brown is our next book for this month. It is our only sports hockey romance, and this one was recommended to me by my friend Victoria, who's been on the channel before. She knows I'm a hockey romance girly, and she said, Mackenzie, there's this author who is literally married to, I believe he's retired now, but to an NHL player, which just adds another layer of reality to maybe this romance novel. And she was like, I really enjoyed it, and I think you would too. She was right. I gave it 3 stars. I had such a good time. This one is a dual POV. We're following our female main character, Lucy, who is a tattoo artist. And I'm going to say a struggling tattoo artist, because she is still trying to get her apprenticeship. And on a night out, she runs into our main male character, Jalen, who is in the NHL, but after a rough season, he doesn't have a contract. So he's auditioning basically to be on a new team. And he truly thinks that he doesn't have a shot. He's like, I've played my last season and I'm devastated. So through a series of events, they go from being like a one-night stand to like just genuinely friends / hookup buddies, into like a more serious and more meaningful friendship to a relationship. And it was a good time. It was really well written. I enjoyed the different diversity that is in this book. We have LGBTQ community represented. Jalen is a Black hockey player, as I believe is the author's husband. I don't know if that sentence grammatically made sense, but I'm sure you guys know what I'm trying to say. And I thought it was interesting seeing him face discrimination at a professional sports level because of the color of his skin. I know that it happens still in 2026, but in my mind, I'm like, this man is just doing his job and he's doing it well. So I enjoyed that. And I believe the author got some of this from her husband. So I just hope that either her husband or this book can inspire other minority athletes that it is still worth it. And there's talk of mental health and getting the help you need. So all in all, it's really well done. I think the second book in this series is coming out later this year, and you can bet that this is already on my holds list for Libby. Our sixth book this month is Brooklyn by Colm Tolbin, I believe is how we pronounce his name. Like many of you, my first experience with Brooklyn was actually the movie of the same name, and I fell in love with it. I watched it, it was so well done, and then I found out it was a book, and it was immediately added to my TBR. Several years have passed between when I first watched Brooklyn and when I read this book last month, but I loved it. And I think they did such a good job keeping or being faithful to this book and the material that they were working off of, because we are still following Eilish, a young woman in the 1950s who is from a small town in Ireland and moves to Brooklyn to make a new life for herself. And we follow as she maybe falls in love and deals with homesickness. And in the book, we're very much dropped into her life. It's her POV that we're through. We get to experience even just mundane things with her. And I truly liked it. I think that there were some differences between the book and the movie, but they weren't major plot points. For example, in the movie, I think they only say that she has her older sister, Rose. But in the book, we find out that she has two brothers as well. The heart of this book is so well written, and there's just the slightest bit of intrigue and drama, and I think it's really well done. And you know, I have never lived through the 1950s, so who knows if it's very accurate to that, but I felt like it was accurate, you know, being a 90s baby. I really did enjoy it. I'll have a little bit more to say because the next book that I read was the sequel, Long Island. I think that this book was published sometime last year in 2025, and I don't know when Brooklyn was published, but I was so excited to find out that there was a sequel. I bought this book while I was in Ireland. I was so thrilled. And I think I'm burying the lead. First of all, I don't think I said what I rated Brooklyn, and that was 4 stars. I rated Long Island 3 stars. And I have very strong mixed emotions about this book. So this book, Long Island, takes place 20 years after the conclusion of Brooklyn. Eilish is now living on Long Island with her husband, her family, her in-laws. They're all neighbors. I feel like that is probably a little bit of a spoiler, but maybe not really. Eilish is a wife, has been for 20 years, is a mother now. She has 2 children in high school. And it's not quite a spoiler because it's on the inside cover or the back cover, depending on the version of book that you buy. But I'm not gonna quite say what's going on because even reading the back cover, I was like, oh, that's not gonna be the main issue. But we're following Ailish, and we're, again, just popped right back into her life. We're following her during a time of disruption and almost like turbulence, not even almost, of turbulence in her marriage. And we see now, instead of her going from Ireland to the US, we see the reverse of that. She needs space to be her own self and figure out who she is again. So she returns to Ireland to celebrate her mother's 80th birthday. And when returning home, we run into old friends and old flames. And she's wondering like what her life would be like, or would have been like, if she had stayed in Ireland at the end of the last book. And we get to see her explore who she is and who she could be. She has about a month there before her two children follow her. And this is actually their first time in Ireland, which I think is another really well-written and beautiful thing of experiencing their first time in Ireland, especially through their mother's eyes. And it's so well done. I loved the drama. I loved the storyline, but I hated that it was happening to Eilish and Tony. I think that if this was just a different family, different characters, this book easily would have been 4 stars for me. But the fact that we're like twisting the knife into characters that I just fell in love with, that's why I have such conflicting feelings. The storyline was good. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. The fact that it was characters that I love, and that I loved the ending to Brooklyn. I was like, you didn't need to go back and do this to these characters. The only other thing that I had to say about maybe like the style was that this book just ends out of nowhere. And I guess looking after I'd read Brooklyn, or I guess after I read this book, going back and reflecting on Brooklyn, it did the same thing. But I was more satisfied with that conclusion. There was the movie, which the conclusion was at a slightly later point than the book. So in my mind, I had these things built up, and that conclusion was reinforced by where we find our characters in this book. This book just ends like right, almost in my mind, the middle of the climax. And I guess it's to let us decide what happens to the characters, but I don't want to decide. I don't want to decide. I want you to tell me what happened, and then I can decide if I agree with you or not, maybe. I think if you really loved Brooklyn, maybe don't read Long Island. Maybe just let your characters be happy. I think that if you want to see what happens, go ahead and read Long Island. Or if you're okay with things becoming unresolved, go ahead and read it. Or if you can just pretend they're completely different characters. It was still an entertaining book. Truly, if it weren't Ailish and her family, probably would have been a 4-star book for me. But this is what happens. Pamona Afton Can So Solve a Murder by Bellamy Rose is the 8th book that I read in April, and I loved it so much. I am just like becoming such a cozy mystery girly. I love this for me, and I love the numerous new books that I now have access to. And access isn't the right word, because I was always able to read them, but now I know I enjoy them and I'm more confident in just going into one. Pamona Afton is an heiress, basically. She is so wealthy. She's never had to have a real job or take care of herself. And all of this comes to an abrupt halt when her grandma, the matriarch of the family, is found dead by mysterious and murderous circumstances. Pamona, who is now cut off with no real resume or skills, has to find a place to live and work through a regular person's job, and is inspired to do what the police can't, which is investigate her own family to see if they're murderers, because the police are not going to have the access that she has. And to be fair, she's very motivated to find her grandma's killer, because if she does, she'll have her money back. And she is very used to a certain lifestyle, we'll say. There are definitely times throughout this book where I was just shaking my head and I'm like, oh my God, she's so innocently naive because of her upbringing. But I love her so, so much. She's so funny, and the book is so well written. I don't have a physical copy yet. I'm planning on buying it and the second one because it was so much fun. I gave this 4.75 stars. It really could probably end up being like a 5-star read in the future. It was amazing, and it was such, I feel bad saying about a murder mystery, but it was such a lighthearted read. Definitely would recommend. Love at First Book by Jean McKinlay is our next book of April, and this is a single POV romance. We have our female main character, Emily, who moves to Ireland from the US to work as an assistant to her all-time favorite author. This assistant job also comes with the part-time job of working in the town's local indie bookstore, which we later find out is run by this author's son, Kieran, who is our love interest. This was a 3-star read. It was a very good but standard romance. If you are a romance fan, I think you could pick this up at any moment and have a great time. I will add a little bit of a content warning that a death of a character, a human character, does occur, and our main characters are dealing with grief towards the end of the book. I don't think this is a surprise. I think pretty early on in the book you can see that this death is going to happen, and it's not necessarily unexpected. But if you're someone who doesn't want to read about grief, I would pass on this romance. I think it was really well written in that aspect, as well as it was really cute seeing how our main character, the love interest, and her favorite author, the three of them work together to finish out the last book in the series that Emily loves. It was just overall a very cute, easy read. A Death in the Dark by Ellie Alexander is our penultimate book of April. I'm not going to spend too much time on this book. Last week's video is a live read and react to this book. So if you would like to solve a murder with me while walking a half marathon, I invite you to go check out that video. Do you think that I can solve this murder before I cross the finish line? If you've already seen last week's video, you know the answer. But as a brief overview for maybe those of you who haven't seen it, this is book 2 in the novel detective series with Annie as our main character and investigator. All of your favorite side characters are back as we work to solve the murder of a high school assistant track coach. I gave this 4 stars. It was another cozy mystery that I really enjoyed, and I am an Ellie Alexander fan. I'm so excited for book 3 in this series to come out. The last book this month is The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi by Shannon Chakraborty. I hope I said your last name correctly. And I also talked about this book previously on the channel because this is one of the books in the traveling book club that I'm doing. And that is only important in the fact that it made this book even more of a fun read for me. We'll touch on that here in a second. This book is about a pirate captain, Amina, who is past her prime, and she gets pulled into one last adventure to save the daughter of one of her old crewmates. To do this, she rallies her team, and we have very funny side characters. We have estranged husbands who may or may not be not entirely of this world. We have magic and mysteries and myths, and we get to see a lot of growth and just all around very humorous times. I think that this story is so great. It's a lovely fantasy and it's really well written, and I love all of the acceptance that is woven throughout this tale of a time when maybe acceptance wasn't the norm. I think that it was so fun to read. I already have book 2 on my Livy holds. And now getting back to this book being part of the traveling book club and it being an even better read, I gave this almost 4 stars. I gave it 3.75 stars. And I think that that is an accurate rating even without it being part of this traveling book club. But I really enjoyed my friend Betsy's comments just throughout. There was one comment towards the end where she goes like, I heard that dumbass. And honestly, same. And I'm going to leave it at that so it's not a spoiler. But having this idea to do a traveling book club where you get a book and you get to annotate it and then send it on to the next person in the list, I'm so happy that we're doing this. I am so excited to get the next book in this chain because then I'll have 2 of my friends' comments along with the book that I get to experience. And I think I would not only recommend this book, but I would recommend, if you're okay annotating books, doing a traveling book club, because I've had so much fun doing it. And those are the 11 books that I read in April. I feel like it was a lot, but also not the normal amount. Here's to hoping that May we get back on track to the kind of sub-goal of doing about 14 books a month. We'll see. I hope that you guys are all having great years and that you're in the middle of a good read. Next week, we'll have producer Brandy back. We're going to do a short little video together. And then at the end of the month, I'm going to have a New York book vlog. So exciting things happening in May. And until next week, bye.